другу України Liz Truss.
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be here in Kiev with my good friend Dmytro. I am here today to show the United Kingdom's steadfast support for Ukraine. I'm very impressed that despite the Russian aggression towards Ukraine, that life here in Kiev goes on. And I am impressed by the level of stoicism, both from the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. We admire your fortitude in the face of Russian aggression, and we stand with you in defence of your right to determine your own future. We're very proud, as the United Kingdom, to be at the forefront of support for Ukraine. We've provided defensive weapons, and we've trained 22,000 members of the Ukrainian army. And when the Prime Minister visited Kiev earlier this month, he announced we're providing 88 million to support Ukraine's democracy and energy independence. Today, I can announce the next component of our support, increasing our funding for these projects to a value of £100 million. I'm also proud, together with Dmytro, to be launching our new trilateral partnership with Poland and Ukraine. We will intensify work on defence and security, sanctions, energy security, and countering disinformation. And this demonstrates that the United Kingdom is willing and ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with allies across Eastern and Central Europe. Russia must think again. Despite their claims, Russia's military build-up shows no signs of slowing. There is currently no evidence that their forces are withdrawing. And we need Russia to step back from the brink. They must take the path of diplomacy. Last week, I delivered a strong message to Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. I told him directly that Russia must respect Ukraine's sovereignty and engage in meaningful talks. If they do not choose the path that we have laid out, I made it clear the price that Russia would pay. We are ready with our allies to impose severe costs on Russia. There would be severe economic costs through an unprecedented package of coordinated sanctions. The United States have been clear that Nord Stream 2 would not go ahead, and Russia would risk creating a prolonged and drawn-out war with a terrible toll which would be borne by the Russian people. Russia would confirm its status as an international pariah. Instead, I urge the Kremlin once again to de-escalate and to choose diplomacy. In the revolution of dignity, the Ukrainian people were clear about the future they want. They chose freedom. And we will show the free world is prepared to stand up and support you in that choice. Together, we can turn the tide on Russian aggression, and we can build a more secure future for all of us right across Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Foreign Secretary, you've warned that Russia could draw out this crisis with Ukraine for months, yet today we've seen a spike in violence in the east and concerns about the potential for escalation. In your opinion, do you think it's more likely that there is going to be an imminent offensive by Russia, or that we're facing a prolonged stalemate?
Well, there is, of course, a significant chance that there could be offensive action by Russia. If not, why are there 100,000 troops on the border with Ukraine? But Russia can still take the path of diplomacy. They can de-escalate, they can move their troops away from the border. And I believe that's in the interests of European security, but it's also in Russia's interests.
We will take one from the Ukrainian media now. Телеканал Дом, давайте ви включайтеся, ставте питання.
Shelling. We're also being informed about Ukraine's
Можливі провокації Росії для наступу, для нової військової операції? Чи вони можливі?
Ну, з 2014 року ми вже бачили все. Провокації, безпідставні обвинувачення, спотворення реальності, метою яких було завжди покласти відповідальність за загострення на Україну і знайти виправдання для Росії та надати їй додаткові приводи для ескалації. Саме тому ми ведемо дуже швидку, ретельну і якісну роботу з усім світом для того, щоб будь-які спроби Росії спотворити реальність, вони були безуспішними. І, безумовно, ми маємо бути готовими до будь-якого сценарію розвитку подій, і всі останні тижні і місяці президент, уряд, парламент, Міністерство закордонних справ, ми працювали над тим, щоб підготувати Україну до будь-якого сценарію. Нам це вдалося, я можу ще раз підтвердити, що Україна зараз перебуває в сильній позиції. Росія буде намагатися створити різні ситуації, щоб покласти на нас відповідальність, але ми дуже чітко готові до будь-якого сценарію.
Foreign Secretary, do you want to?
We have been warning about the likelihood of a false flag operation, and that is what we are seeing taking place. And we are very clear, the aggressor in this situation is Russia. We will continue to call out false flag operations, we will continue to call out their cyber attacks and their attempts to undermine Ukraine, which is a democratic sovereign country, which Russia agreed to respect in various agreements, including the Budapest 1994 memorandum.
Thank you. I know that there are a lot of media who want to ask questions, but we don't have time, unfortunately. I just want to say before we finish that there will be a separate speech by Foreign Secretary after we finish this broadcast in a few moments, so keep with us and watch this speech, please. And thank you all. We finished the press conference of this.
While I not be present during your speech, I have full trust in Liz Truss.
Okay. Very good. And I'll see you in Munich.
Hopefully, again.
You will get to Munich, won't you?
Yes, I am. If you say the minister's support, I will
coordinate. That's okay.
We're just waiting for the broadcast of MFA.
Adam, can I pass you this file? Very good.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so we will begin finally the speech by Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, and I invite her to deliver it. Ms. Secretary.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The spectre of Russian aggression has long hung over Eastern Europe. Today it menaces our friends in Ukraine and threatens security and stability for us all. We stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Despite Russia's claims, the military build-up shows no signs of slowing down. There is currently no evidence that forces are withdrawing. Russia must step back from the brink. The Kremlin has had every offer of diplomacy: the Normandy process, proposals for further talks in the NATO-Russia Council, transparency mechanisms through the OSCE, and countless bilateral discussions. Time after time, they have chosen not to engage with these proposals, but to obfuscate and object. When President Putin spoke at the Munich Security Conference 15 years ago, he said that NATO expansion represents a serious provocation. Since then, NATO has not expanded its membership closer to Russian territory. But Russia has invaded 2 sovereign states and continues to undermine their territorial integrity. Russia faces no threat from NATO or Ukraine, but accommodating illegitimate Russian concerns would not make their threats disappear. Instead, Russia would be emboldened. Bullies only respond to strength. I urge Russia to take the path of diplomacy. We are ready to talk. We can talk at the UN as fellow members of the P5, at the OSCE, at the NATO-Russia Council, and Russia can talk bilaterally with the United States as well as with other NATO allies. I say to Russia, now is the time to de-escalate and choose diplomacy. But we are very clear. If they decide to continue down the path of aggression, there will be massive consequences, bringing Russia severe economic costs and pariah status. For years now, Russia has been building its capabilities, violating its commitments and probing our weaknesses. The West needs to wise up. We need to work together to discredit their arguments in public. We should use our intelligence strategically to challenge their narrative, as we did last month, exposing the Kremlin's plans to install a pro-Russian leader in Kiev and exposing their military build-up on the border. And we should take on falsehoods, like Russia's claims that the 2014 Revolution of Dignity was a coup d'etat, or when they talk about the indivisibility of security, as if it means that security is a zero-sum game. Russia argues that increasing one state's security can only come at the expense of another's, and with this perverse philosophy, they falsely claim that countries on Russia's borders should not be able to defend themselves or join defensive alliances like NATO. I challenged Foreign Minister Lavrov on this in Moscow last week. The commitment to indivisibility of security runs through the Helsinki Accords and the OSCE summits in Istanbul and Astana, and it means the precise opposite of what Russia claims. It's actually a message of mutual dependence, that our security is inseparable and that a threat to one imperils the security of all. Russia claims that it's being threatened. But what is the real threat? It's not NATO's defensive alliance. The real threat is more than 100,000 battle-ready troops massed on the border of this sovereign state. Russia thinks NATO shouldn't expand. The truth is that countries want to join NATO. People want insurance, and they see safety in numbers. And this is only accelerated by Russia's belligerence. Their aggression is driving NATO to strengthen its resolve. It turns the people of Ukraine and others against Russia, and it forces customers of Russian gas to question the reliability of their supplier. Russia's aggression is not just targeted at Ukraine. Their campaign of hybrid warfare across Europe has brought cyber attacks, attempts to undermine elections, and the use of chemical and radiological weapons on the streets of London and Salisbury. They are supporting destabilising mercenaries across Africa. They've chipped away at the architecture that makes us all more secure. I mean everything from developing missiles in violation of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty to breaking the commitments they made to Ukraine in Helsinki, Budapest and Minsk. And now they've deployed their new generation of intermediate-range missiles which can launch nuclear and conventional warheads. This is one of the most destabilising developments of the last decade. We will be strong and we will act together. And even if Russia pulls back from the Ukrainian border, the problem will have not gone away. The free world needs to draw a line under a decade of drift. That means investing in defence and deterrence and pressing on with NATO's rapid modernisation. If we hang back, that would only embolden the bullies in their campaign against sovereignty and the right to self-determination. This is a litmus test for the West. We must stand up and defuse Russian aggression now, because if we don't, it will embolden not only the Kremlin, but aggressors, authoritarians and autocrats right around the world. What matters here in Eastern Europe matters for the world, and it matters for the future. We have a duty to make sure that the next 10 years are better than the last. And of course, threats exist far beyond the Euro-Atlantic region. Our security is also indivisible from what is going on in the Asia-Pacific. Beijing is increasing its assertiveness and expanding its armed forces at breakneck speed. They're upending the rule of law to create no-go areas in the South China Sea and conducting military flights near Taiwan. But China is not the same as Russia. They claim a policy of non-interference. That's why it's surprising to see China's leaders aligning themselves with the Kremlin. They didn't object to the 2014 invasion of Crimea. They now talk about who should or shouldn't be able to join NATO. And last month they joined Russia in resisting a Security Council discussion in Ukraine. If China wants to be seen as a responsible global actor, they should be doing everything possible to ensure that Russia steps back. The world is watching to see whether their actions contribute to peace and stability or to fueling aggression. So how can we deal with this growing questioning of security norms and frameworks? How can we make sure that Ukraine and all of us are safer in the years to come? I think there are three areas that we should focus on. Firstly, alongside deterrence, we must recommit to arms control. Much of the architecture we have now arose in the 1990s. It reflects what Mrs. Thatcher called yesterday's vision of the future. In the 21st century, we need to take account of new technologies and take a more global approach. We call on Russia and China to work with us on agreements that will keep our citizens safe. In the long run, we can't have a situation where the United States is limited through arms control agreements, but others can act unconstrained. We have to strengthen accountability for breaches of agreements, calling out non-compliance if we have in the abhorrent use of chemical weapons by Russia and Syria. And we must improve transparency and trust-building measures. We need to act together on nuclear disarmament, where the UK has long taken a lead. We made a historic affirmation last month, together with the rest of the P5. We committed to the Reagan-Gorbachev pledge that a nuclear war could not be won and should not be fought. We must build on that and put in place concrete measures to reduce the risk of nuclear war. And with that in mind, we must redouble our shared efforts to stop Iran's nuclear programme. Secondly, we need to manage those areas where the rules are weakest or where clashes and escalation are most likely to break out. Namely space, cyberspace, the information space and the high seas. Ukrainians know all too well how damaging cyber attacks and disinformation can be. And that's why the UK is working with our partners to set standards in these areas, including the use of new technology. That's why we're leading work in the UN to broker an international consensus on responsible behaviour towards space. And that's why we're establishing a new government information unit in the UK. This will be an agile, fully equipped team tasked with rebutting false narratives and countering the disinformation that malign actors use to target and undermine democratic societies. Finally, we must strengthen our ties with friends and partners and strengthen our shared capabilities. We want to see democracies across Europe and beyond stepping up to the plate. We will work more closely with our allies, friends and partners, including the EU. We want to see NATO accelerate its modernisation and seize the opportunity of their new strategic concept to strengthen defence and deterrence. We're already putting our money where our mouth is, as NATO's biggest defence spender in Europe. We're joining with our Baltic and Nordic partners in the groundbreaking UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force. We're providing defensive weapons to Ukraine and have trained 22,000 members of the Ukrainian army. And we're taking the lead in developing new security ties, like our new AUKUS partnership with the US and Australia, and our growing partnership with Poland and Ukraine. In dangerous times, we have to take a hard-headed approach. That includes being ready to accept short-term pain for long-term gain, whether through imposing tough sanctions or cutting strategic dependence by opposing Nord Stream 2. This is how we will ensure the next 10 years are defined not by danger and drift, but by strength and stability. We want to live in a world where people are in charge of their own future, free from aggression and coercion, where security is truly indivisible, and where nations respect the sovereignty of others and live up to their commitments. That means working together with our friends in Ukraine and beyond to face down malign threats. It means leading the charge to ensure the architecture of peace stands the test of time. And it means making the hard choices to keep our people safe and build a better, more secure future for all of us. That is our mission, and together we can make that happen. Thank you.